And I would have to say I am not the poster child for the conclusion of that report. Bryce Johnson, if we could start with you, there were two key points in there. One was consumer pressure, the other was greenwashing. Do you think we're seeing an element of greenwashing here? I mean, this is a big organisation with great communications.
I certainly think we are, and that's where the Clean Streams Court has got to. It is now essentially greenwash. When it first started 5 or 6 years ago, it was a first attempt by the industry, and only one bit of the industry, to do something about green issues. We're way past that now, and so now persistence with the Clean Streams Court is really greenwash. There's a lot more the company needs to do to turn that into mandatory requirements for environmentally sustainable best practice. That's the only future for New Zealand agriculture, and anything short of that is essentially greenwash, and we know we have to get there.
And you're going to completely disagree with that, aren't you, John?
I am going to disagree with it, of course. Enormous progress has been achieved in 4 years. With 4 years to run, we're nowhere near the end of this challenge with respect to farmers' attitudes to the environment. It's in terms and language. I mean, we're dealing with streams that are deeper than the red band of a gumboot. Language that our farmer suppliers understand. It's entrenched the idea of environment thoroughly in their minds in ways in 2001, 2002, Bryce would have blessed.
But there is an extent, surely, to which Fonterra is buying itself a green image. You sponsor the Environmentalist of the Year award, for example. Wouldn't it be better if you just went and cleaned up your act?
Hey, we're absolutely committed, as I said earlier, to a sustainable supply chain from pasture to plate. We have no choice. Our future depends upon that.
Well, build it into your contract with your suppliers. Well, that's where it needs to be.
In effect, Russell, it is there in terms of the effluent indicator system
you
now.
You have a look at it, it's as weak as anything.
And it is important to you, isn't it? Obviously, you know, how important is that clean green image?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, you think of our markets, they purchase our products with Association of New Zealand. We're committed to this challenge.
Bryce Johns, you've written this up as a regional paper. The specialist dairy industry media, I think, has been quite good on it. It now looks as if it may, it's gone national. Do you think that there's a chance that this may go international?
Look, when you get things like Sanlu, you're going to have more of a focus on an organisation like Fonterra, undoubtedly. We're possibly seeing international media organisations here now, or about to come here to look at that. But it isn't going to be the media pressure that does it. It's the regulatory bodies and people like EW. That when we make decisions to run something like that, there's a whole host of pressures that come on a newspaper like us, an editor, from people who care and want things done.
Because it is a lot of money. It's people's livelihoods, isn't it?
And they are going to do more with the rules they've got and force people to do it if it doesn't happen as quickly as the people like Bryce want. And I think Fonterra knows that. It's turning on its axis. It's probably not visible to everyone, but things are changing very quickly.
Do you think consumer pressure is going to be relevant in this debate?
Look, I don't think so. There's not a strong enough body out there at the moment. People are too worried about the $12 a block of cheese. That's where the focus is at the moment, how much we're paying for cheese. And there are a number of people who will, from the green side of things, who won't purchase that product, but it just doesn't have traction yet.
It's interesting, though, increasingly the public are now making the connection between the impacts of agriculture and where they go to have a picnic on the weekend. And there's some very good information now coming out of Lincoln University, which is making that exact linkage. That more and more Kiwis are now saying, hey, we want clean water. We want our brand. We're very proud of our 100% pure brand. We're worried it might become a 73% pure New Zealand brand. And at that point...
But they're not going to go vegan to get it, though, are they? They're not going to stop using the products,
but they'll certainly put the pressure on companies to say, clean up your environmental act and take responsibility for your adverse effects. And that's not what's happening at the moment. At the moment, Bryce mentioned regional councils. Regional councils are funded by ratepayers. And our view would be, and I think a lot of the public would say, they shouldn't have to be paying through their rates to require Fonterra and their suppliers to act environmentally responsibly. That should be done within the companies, and there's a real role here for the dairy companies to put a lot more pressure on their suppliers and build into their contracts environmental sustainability requirements, and that's simply not happening enough yet at all.
And I have to say, Fonterra has a great deal to say on this. I've been looking through your website. It is brilliantly done. You give a great account of yourselves, and yet it seems with stories like this you're still not getting your side of the story across. Is there any other way you can do this?
Well, we've got to continue to work with our partners, government in particular, Dairy New Zealand, the industry good body, $17 million worth of research going into extension activities, leadership and the like in order to continue this process of achieving sustainable dairying.
Is there a point where there just can't be any more dairy farms?
Oh, there's a limit to the capacity, and indeed we need to up the research so that we can manage our nutrient losses, core issue, better than we are.
Look, that's a major issue in our region, because they're turning a lot of forestry in the South Waikato into dairy farms, and that's the research that EW, probably Fonterra, is involved with now, because are we going to hit tipping point with a massive amount of acreage that is going to turn into dairy farms in the next 15, 20 years?
But the trouble is we're putting that stuff in now, and we're doing it without knowing the outcome. I mean, the smart thing to do, they did with the seafood industry, is to put in a moratorium. And we've said to government, well, why don't you try and implement a moratorium while we get the information? You know, it's called, in resource management terms, it's called the precautionary principle. You know, simply put a hold until you know what the outcome is likely to be. The trouble is we're keeping on developing, putting more and more cows into more and more areas. We don't know what the impact's going to be, and when we finally do find out, the damage will be done.
Is it relevant, though, to give Fonterra credit for the good things it's doing? Some of the energy projects seem quite forward-looking. Are they relevant, or is that more greenwash?
Well, I don't know enough about the detail of those particular projects. In terms of, you cut it right down to the basics, what Fonterra's relationship is with its individual suppliers, they have a pretty weak contract with their suppliers. I understand the other dairy companies have even weaker contracts on the environmental side. And that would be a good thing for the media to do, in fact, would be to press the dairy companies to come clean publicly with what's in their actual supply contracts on environmental issues. Let's see what conditions that they are putting on their suppliers through the contract. And I think you'll find there's almost bugger all there.
Right. John, you're the one in the gun. What kind of stories would you like to see? Because it seems like these stories are fair. They may not suit you as a company, but...
You've hit on two good points. First, in 2006, we saved as much electricity from our 26 plants throughout New Zealand as is used by the City of Hamilton. Good news story. Absolutely committed to doing that every year going forward. In terms of the amount of carbon in our product, take a kilo block of cheese, we're the most efficient in the world, 30% more efficient than the United Kingdom, for example. But your second point's also important, and that is suppliers, our farmers, respond best when they've got information. Hence, to have over 98% of our suppliers now with nutrient budgets is important. And yes, Bryce, we need now move that into whole farm nutrient management plans and applying the best practice, and that's where we're focusing.
Well, I hope we do see some results from it, and you two can continue to argue in the bar. And that is all we have time for this week. Thank you to our panellists, Bryce Johns, Bryce Johnson and John Hutchings, and thank you for watching. We'll be back at the same time next week with Media 7. Until then, goodbye.